Okay, so let's just dive right in. In early March of 2026, a whole series of events just exploded onto the world stage, throwing everything into chaos. And it all kicked off with a war that seemed to get more confusing and honestly more dangerous by the hour.
Then, boom, the crisis really ignited with this post on social media. It was a really sharp turn from what had been promised earlier, suddenly demanding unconditional surrender. But what did that even mean? There wasn't a clear military objective or a diplomatic path forward attached to it. It just appeared.
And you can see here just how weird this got. I mean, on one side, you have the historical definition of unconditional surrender. A formal defeat, fighting stops, international rules. But the White House's definition? When asked to clarify, they basically said it means whatever the president decides it is. The goals would be figured out as they went along. Talk about a moving target. And this is where it gets pretty dark. A statement from an administration official really suggested that the immediate goal wasn't some kind of diplomatic victory. It was just destruction. It started to feel like the violence was the point, which left everyone, both allies and enemies, just scratching their heads wondering, what is the end game here?
So you might be thinking, okay, this is all focused on Iran, right? Well, not so fast. It became very clear, very quickly, that this new, aggressive posture wasn't going to be limited to the Middle East. The chaos was about to go global.
And just like that, the administration's focus snaps from halfway across the world to our own backyard. They pivoted to a new, hardline stance on Latin America, and they gave it this big, sweeping name, the Shield of the Americas. And this wasn't just talk either. It rolled out in 3 pretty distinct steps. First, a warning goes out to 16 different nations. Basically, get tougher on the cartels, or we will. Next, a summit is called to put together a formal anti-cartel coalition that's ready and willing to use military force. And then, a brand new target was put right into the crosshairs. You really don't have to read between the lines on this one. This was a pretty open declaration that another regime change was on the table, only this time it was for a country just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. So back in Washington, people are just scrambling. You have this escalating chaos, and analysts and lawmakers are trying to figure out what on earth is going on? How do you explain this? And 2 main theories started to bubble up, and wow, they could not have been more different from each other. Okay, so let's break these down. On one side, you have the psychological theory. The idea here is that this isn't some grand strategy, some 4D chess. It's the result of one individual's psychosis, maybe driven by a fragile ego that demands total dominance. But on the other side, there's a much more alarming possibility, the geopolitical theory. This one suggests that the chaos isn't random at all, but a deliberate pattern of actions that consistently serves the strategic interests of another country, Russia. And the distinction here is absolutely critical, right? One implies a personal crisis that might just burn itself out, while the other suggests a deep, systemic threat to national security.
This brings us to a really critical question. I mean, if you entertain that geopolitical theory for even a second, you have to ask why. Why would the leader of the United States pursue policies that seem to consistently favor Moscow over America's own allies?
Well, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse actually laid out a pretty compelling case for this on the Senate floor. He pointed to this clear pattern of behavior: pausing weapons to Ukraine, easing sanctions on Russia, putting a director of national intelligence in place who is seen as being soft on Russia, and even stopping investigations into oligarchs. His conclusion was just chilling. He basically said, if the president were intentionally trying to help Russia, it's hard to imagine what he'd be doing differently.
And this led Senator Whitehouse to suggest that the answer might not be in some policy debate, but that it could be hidden inside a notorious and still unresolved scandal, providing a potential motive for this otherwise baffling behavior.
So the theory goes something like this. It all starts with the Jeffrey Epstein files, which are reportedly filled with connections to Russia. Then you have all these reports of hidden cameras in his properties, with blackmail being the explicit goal. In fact, one victim, Virginia Guffrey, stated he flat out used tapes to gain favors. And the theory culminates with an alleged cover-up at the Justice Department, an effort to shield the president from those very files. It lays out a potential trail of compromise and influence. So just as Washington is debating these 2 theories, the psychological versus the geopolitical, a bombshell news report drops, and it connects the 2 crises directly. Russia wasn't just a bystander enjoying the chaos, it was allegedly an active participant, helping Iran target and kill American troops. So of course, a reporter asks the president about this bombshell. I mean, the idea that Russia is helping kill Americans.
The response wasn't a denial. It was a complete dismissal of the question itself, a total deflection from the horrifying allegation that a geopolitical rival was helping an active enemy in a time of war.
And that leaves us with the central, terrifying, and completely unanswered question in this whole crisis. In the middle of a war, with an adversary reportedly helping the enemy attack American forces, why is that connection apparently being ignored at the highest level? It's a question that ties a chaotic war in the Middle East to a potential web of influence that might just stretch all the way back to Moscow.